I never thought I'd be standing outside her door at midnight, shoes scuffing the faded rug, heart hammering like it wanted to break free. But here I was. Of course, I'd been thinking about her all day, about her laugh, that quiet way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the curve of her shoulders under that soft cashmere sweater, but standing here, it felt different. Dangerous, somehow. Her apartment smelled like vanilla and old books when she opened the door. She blinked at me in the dim hallway light, one hand on the doorframe, the other holding a cup of tea that was probably cold by now. "You're still here," she said, and her voice caught just slightly. That tiny hitch made me aware of how close I'd been watching her for months without saying anything. I swallowed. I couldn't stop thinking. My words sounded small, hesitant, even ridiculous, but I couldn't take them back. She shifted, and the soft wool of her sweater brushed against her wrist, like she was aware of every motion but trying not to show it. There was a tension in the room, quiet and heavy, the kind that made the air feel thicker, like we were both holding our breath. She didn't step back, didn't tell me I should leave. She just looked at me, really looked, and I felt exposed, every stupid insecurity, every longing I'd buried since the first time she smiled at me in that cafe, laid bare in her gaze. I didn't mean to, I started, but the words faltered. What could I say? That I'd spent weeks imagining this? That my fingers ached to brush against hers? That every time she laughed, I felt like a fool for feeling so alive and so terrified at the same time? She tilted her head, eyes softening in a way that made me want to step closer and lose the last shred of caution I had left. "It's okay," she murmured. Her lips parted just slightly, like she was about to say more but stopped herself. And in that pause, I realized, she'd been feeling this too, in silence, carrying it quietly the way I'd carried my own obsession. The living room was dim, just the faint glow from the streetlights slipping through the blinds. I noticed the little things, her hand resting near the teacup, her knee brushing the edge of the rug, a stray curl of hair falling across her forehead. I wanted to reach out, to tuck it behind her ear, to see if she'd let me. We stood there, close enough that I could feel her warmth without touching, but far enough to maintain a fragile barrier neither of us wanted to break, at least not yet. My pulse was loud in my ears, every inhale a reminder that she was real, alive, and impossibly, devastatingly hers in a way I had no right to claim. And then, just as I was about to step forward, my mouth opening to finally bridge the distance, the sound cut through the quiet, a faint, deliberate ding from her phone on the coffee table. Her eyes flicked to it, and for a second, I thought the spell would shatter. She froze. I froze. And in that heartbeat of hesitation, I realized something terrifyingly thrilling. Whatever happened next, nothing could stay silent anymore. The phone sat forgotten on the table, buzzing quietly under the weight of our attention. I didn't move to pick it up, and she didn't reach for it either. In that pause, I felt something shift, like the air itself had thickened with unspoken confessions. She sank onto the edge of the sofa, pulling her knees close, wrapping her arms around them. The gesture was small, almost instinctive, but it told me more than words ever could. I remembered the first time I saw her at the cafe, sitting alone with a notebook, scribbling furiously yet with a kind of gentle focus that made me stop mid-step. She was always so composed, so careful, but now, here, she seemed fragile in a way that made my chest ache. I haven't been," she started, then stopped, biting her lower lip. I caught the movement, the hesitation, the tiny tremor in her hand. She glanced at me, then away, as if revealing too much would break something delicate between us. I swallowed hard. "You don't have to explain," I said. But my words sounded hollow even to me. I had questions, yes, but they were tangled with my own guilt, about the fact that I'd been waiting, watching, hoping for moments like this for months, all while knowing the world would never make it easy. Her eyes, dark and steady, finally met mine. "I wasn't always alone," she admitted softly, voice catching. "It ended badly. I trusted too much once. I lost myself trying to make someone else happy." I nodded, understanding more than I could say. I'd had my own share of mistakes, heartbreaks I carried quietly, ashamed of how much they had shaped me. I get that, I whispered. I've been reckless, in ways I don't even want to admit. There it was, the unspoken thread that connected us. We were both scarred, both wary, both drawn together by something dangerous. The age difference didn't matter in that room, but I knew it would matter outside of it. People would judge. She might even regret letting herself feel this way. And yet, the risk made the silence more electric, more intoxicating. For a moment, I forgot the world. I forgot everything except the warmth of her presence, the quiet rhythm of her breathing, the soft brush of her fingers against the edge of the sofa cushion. I wanted to reach out, to let my hand find hers, but I hesitated, afraid of ruining the fragile balance we'd somehow built in mere hours. Then she moved. Just slightly, just enough that our knees brushed. A spark. A small laugh escaped her, nervous, unguarded, and my hand itched to cover it, to still it, to make it ours. Do you remember, she murmured, voice low, that afternoon at the park? The one with the old fountain? I smiled, heart tightening. I did. I hadn't expected her to bring it up, hadn't expected her to remember. The memory, the way the sunlight hit the water, the way she'd laughed so freely, without thinking of anyone else, made something inside me ache with longing. And then our eyes met, lingering longer than they should have. No words were spoken, but in that gaze, we both knew, something had shifted. Something unspoken had been acknowledged, and neither of us could ignore it anymore. The soft glow of the streetlight slipped through the blinds, painting the room in streaks of golden shadow. I had leaned closer, heart thudding so loud I was certain she could hear it, when the sharp buzz of her phone made us both jump. Her thumb hovered over the screen, hesitating. It's nothing, she muttered, voice tighter than before. But I caught the quick glance, the flicker of worry in her eyes. The unspoken truth settled between us, someone could find out. Someone would find out. I shifted, just slightly, careful not to invade the fragile space she'd created around herself. I shouldn't be here, I said, almost a whisper, almost convincing myself. Maybe this is a mistake. She looked down, fingers brushing her mug. I keep thinking that too, she admitted softly. But when she met my eyes, the vulnerability there made it impossible for me to step back. Not yet. We inched closer, magnetic and terrified, like moths circling a flame. I could feel her warmth through the thin fabric of her sweater. I could see the way her breath hitched when our knees brushed again. Every instinct screamed to pull away, yet every heartbeat dragged me closer. And then, footsteps. Light, tentative, coming from the hall. Her eyes widened, and instinctively she reached out, grabbing my arm, holding me still. My pulse jumped. Not now, she whispered, panic laced in her tone. I froze. The door to her apartment opened slightly, just enough for the faintest sliver of light to spill into the room. A shadow moved, her roommate, or maybe a neighbor, I couldn't tell, and then it was gone. We exhaled, barely, holding on to the fragile cocoon that had formed around us. I wanted to lean in, wanted to close the distance between us, but guilt pressed down, heavy and insistent. The thought of anyone discovering this, of her being judged or hurt, made my stomach twist. Why do we keep doing this to ourselves? She asked, voice barely above a whisper, almost pleading. Her fingers still lingered on my arm, trembling slightly. I couldn't answer. I didn't want to. I reached for her hand, gently, just grazing her palm. It was enough. It was dangerous enough. Her gaze locked on mine, searching, questioning, and I felt something shatter inside me, the barrier I'd carefully built around myself to stay rational. Because it feels like this is all real, I admitted, voice hoarse. Like nothing else matters, even if it's wrong. Her lips parted slightly, and for a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that tiny opening between us. Almost, just almost, I closed the last inch. But the sharp memory of judgment, of consequences, froze me in place. She leaned back slightly, just enough to break the tension, but not enough to let go completely. We're playing with fire, she said, and I couldn't argue. I knew it. and yet, neither of us moved away. The room felt smaller, tighter, filled with every unsaid word, every stolen glance, every heartbeat that belonged to someone else, yet somehow belonged to each other. We were both terrified of what we felt, and yet powerless to resist it. And just as my hand brushed against hers again, the faintest sound of a key turning in the lock made us both freeze, hearing it, knowing that whatever was about to happen could not stay hidden any longer. The key in the lock rattled again, slower this time, deliberate. My stomach dropped. She turned toward the sound, her expression caught between panic and resolve. For a fraction of a second, the world outside her apartment ceased to exist. We were suspended in a bubble of tension, one wrong move away from everything shattering. I could see it in her eyes, fear, yes, but also something sharper, desire, the kind that burns quietly until it erupts. Her jaw tightened, and she stepped closer to me, a move that was equal parts warning and invitation. My pulse raced. I wanted to reach for her, to erase all hesitation, but something inside me screamed caution. I can't, not say it anymore, she whispered, voice trembling but unwavering. She was trembling, and yet there was steel in her spine, a courage I hadn't known she carried. I've been holding back, pretending this attraction doesn't exist. But I can't. I can't lie to you, or myself. I froze, breath caught somewhere between panic and relief. My voice faltered. All the careful plans, all the restraint, evaporated in that instant. My hands twitched at my sides, desperate to reach her but afraid to overstep. Her hand brushed mine, just barely, and it was enough to ignite the fire I'd been keeping in check. The brush lingered, small, tentative, yet it carried all the weight of months of silence and longing. I wanted to close the distance, to let every unsaid word spill through touch alone. Then the jealousy hit me, sharp and bitter. Not at another person, not yet, but at the thought of anyone else seeing her, claiming even a fragment of her attention. My hand trembled slightly as I inched closer. Don't stop, I whispered, not fully sure if I meant her or myself. Her lips parted, just a hint, as if she'd been rehearsing this moment in secret. I don't want to stop either, she confessed, her voice low, intimate, a dangerous pull that made my chest ache. The distance between us evaporated, the air thick with everything we hadn't said, everything we'd been holding back. My heart thudded so loudly I thought she'd hear it. I wanted to close the last inch, to feel her lips, to lose myself completely, but reality pressed against me, jagged and insistent. The key in the lock rattled again, sharper, and the faintest shadow fell across the doorway. We froze, eyes locking, breath mingling, both of us caught in the fragile tension of desire and fear. I could see her pulse in her neck, feel the tremble in her fingers. Every instinct screamed to act, to claim, to surrender. But the consequences waited like a predator just beyond the threshold. And then, just as I tilted my head forward, leaning toward her in the dangerous orbit we'd created, the door swung open. Time slowed. The room, the air, the quiet we'd built, it all held its breath. The door swung open, and my chest sank, not with relief, but with a sharp jolt of dread. It wasn't a neighbor or her roommate. It was him. Her ex-husband, or at least someone who had been a fixture in her life, his presence sudden and accusing. What's going on here? His voice was calm, but it carried a weight that made the room feel smaller, hotter. She froze, eyes wide, fingers gripping my arm like a lifeline. I wanted to pull back, to disappear, but I couldn't. She stammered, but he cut her off with a sharp glance. Don't lie to me. I saw the messages. I know everything. The words hit like ice. Everything we had been carefully hiding, every silent longing, every near touch, suddenly had a witness. I felt my stomach twist, the heat in my chest turning to panic. She looked at me, her face pale, eyes shining with a mix of fear and frustration. It's not like that, she whispered, but her voice lacked conviction even to her own ears. I knew that the weight of years, of broken promises, of trust betrayed, made it impossible to explain in mere words. I wanted to step forward, to shield her, to take the blame, but the reality pressed against me. This wasn't just about us anymore. The stakes had shifted, and the consequences were sharper than any fear I had imagined. He moved closer, eyes flicking between us, and my chest tightened. "She's lying to protect you," I said before I could stop myself. My words startled even me, reckless and bold, but necessary. She looked at me then, a spark of something unspoken passing between us, relief, gratitude, and maybe even more. He laughed softly, bitterly. "You think protecting him helps anything? This is wrong. You know it." The words stung, but not the way he intended. Instead, they unearthed something raw inside me, anger, yes, but also a fierce protective love I hadn't fully admitted to myself until now. "Maybe it is," I said, voice steady, "but feelings aren't always about right or wrong." She exhaled shakily, and I could see the conflict in her eyes, the pull toward me, the weight of the past pressing down. Her hand found mine, gripping tightly, as if drawing courage from the connection we had fought so long to keep hidden. "I can't lose this," she whispered, barely audible, and the vulnerability in her voice broke something open in me. I leaned closer, the air between us charged, magnetic, even as the world outside threatened to crash in. For a moment, it felt like everything teetered on the edge, our desire, our fear, our secret now exposed, all suspended in that fragile heartbeat before everything could shatter. And then he stepped back, cold and final, muttering something about consequences that neither of us could ignore. Her eyes met mine, and without words, I understood, we'd crossed a line. There was no turning back. The risk had escalated, the truth was out, and yet, somehow, we were closer than ever. The apartment felt smaller than ever, walls pressing in with the weight of unspoken truths. The shadows of streetlights stretched across the floor, painting jagged lines that mirrored the tension between us. Her fingers were still entwined with mine, and I realized I hadn't felt her this close without hesitation, without the shadow of fear, since the very first night I'd noticed her smile in that quiet cafe. "I don't care anymore," she whispered, voice raw. "I can't keep pretending I'm not feeling this. Not for you, not for me, not for anyone." Her admission struck me harder than I expected. Relief, fear, and longing collided, leaving my chest tight, hands trembling. I feel the same," I said, barely audible. "Every day. Every hour I've spent pretending I could control it, it's useless." She laughed softly, a sound threaded with disbelief and emotion, and for the first time that night, she leaned in just slightly, not enough to kiss, not yet, but enough to erase the final distance between us. Her warmth brushed against my shoulder, and the tension coiled in my chest began to unravel, replaced with a dizzying mixture of hope and fear. "I know it's reckless," she murmured, tilting her head, "and maybe we'll regret it." Maybe, her voice trailed off, uncertain, but her eyes said everything. She was willing to risk it, willing to step into the unknown with me. "I'll take that risk," I said firmly, letting go of every thought of judgment, consequences, or what anyone else might say. "With you." We stood like that for a long moment, suspended between hesitation and surrender, our breaths mingling in the quiet of the room. And yet, even as we edged closer, reality still whispered its warnings. The world outside, the shadow of what had almost seen us, the consequences waiting in the dark, they hadn't disappeared. I brushed a strand of hair from her face, careful, deliberate. Her eyes closed briefly, just a flicker, and I could feel her heartbeat against my chest. We didn't speak. Words were useless here. Our connection had transcended explanation. Then she shifted, almost reluctantly, as if the weight of the decision had only just settled. "Promise me something," she said, voice low. "Promise me we'll face whatever comes, together. No running. No silence." "I promise," I said, and it felt like the most honest thing I'd ever said. Her fingers squeezed mine, and in that small gesture, I understood that whatever happened next, whatever chaos or judgment awaited us, we had each other. That was enough. For now. The room fell silent again, heavy but comforting, and we simply stood there, side by side. The future was uncertain. The world outside was messy and loud. But inside that apartment, in the quiet aftermath of confession and risk, we finally understood each other. And though nothing had fully resolved beyond this fragile peace, I knew, without question, that we had crossed the threshold. Whatever came next, we would face it together. Morning light filtered softly through the blinds, warm and forgiving. For the first time in what felt like forever, the apartment didn't feel like a trap, didn't feel heavy with secrets. It felt alive, as if the world had finally taken a quiet breath with us. She was in the kitchen, mug in hand, leaning against the counter, eyes still a little puffy from last night's confessions. I watched her, drinking in every small detail, the tilt of her shoulder, the curve of her smile, the way she seemed both stronger and softer at the same time. "You're staring," she said, teasing lightly, but her voice carried a tenderness that made my chest ache. "I'm just glad," I said, stepping closer. "Glad we didn't run. Glad we didn't hide it anymore." She set down the mug and walked toward me, careful and deliberate. The apartment was quiet except for our footsteps, the soft hum of the fridge, the faint echo of our breaths sinking. And then she reached out, touching my face gently, her fingers warm, grounding. "I never thought I'd feel this," she admitted, voice low, almost vulnerable. "Like someone actually sees me, all of me. And still wants me." I smiled softly, my hand covering hers. "I've wanted this for months," I whispered. "More than I thought I could admit even to myself. And now it doesn't feel impossible anymore." We lingered there, the tension finally replaced by something solid, something real. No games. No secrets. Just a connection that had survived fear, judgment, almost everything the world could throw at us. "I suppose this is the beginning," she said, her eyes sparkling with the faintest hint of mischief and hope. I laughed quietly, relief mixing with joy. "The beginning," I agreed. And even though uncertainty would always exist outside these walls, inside, we had chosen each other. That choice, messy and brave and terrifying, was ours alone. We spent the morning wrapped in quiet conversation, in laughter, in moments that felt both fleeting and eternal. There were still consequences waiting outside, glances from strangers, questions from friends, but we didn't rush to face them. Not yet. We had this, a fragile, human, undeniable love that had survived months of silence, longing, and risk. And as I held her hand, feeling her pulse against mine, I knew that no matter what came next, we had crossed the threshold from longing into something enduring. The past was a shadow, but the present, the moments we shared, the choices we made, was ours to keep. We didn't need to speak to understand each other. Every glance, every touch, every pause carried the weight of months of unspoken love. And for the first time I didn't feel fear. Because now, finally, we were together. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?